years. It's been a pleasure, a privilege, and truly an honor to be able to work with Matt Lavery of UPS, who's behind me, and the UPS Workforce Planning team. We've done some wonderful things along the way, and we have a terrific presentation to provide to you. One that is really substantive, but I hope as you go through this that what you see is not a large company undertaking an initiative, but look at what's being presented and see how you can internalize the processes that we're sharing with you, the strategies to drive the results that we share with you, and bring them home with you, whether you're a large, medium, or small-sized company. Because truly, if you can look at what we've gone through on this roadmap and bring some of those elements back to you, you should be able to accomplish in your own way, based upon what your company needs and be in alignment with their hiring needs, much of the same success that we've had for UPS. I have some things that I wanted to share with you that have been inspirations for Matt and for me as we went on this, this quest, if you will. The first book is the Steve Jobs biography. How many folks have had an opportunity to be able to read this? It's not a sympathetic portrait, is it? No. But one of the biggest ideas behind it is think different. And for social media for recruiting, you need to think different. You need to think different from the ways that you've traditionally used recruitment marketing to be able to engage and recruit talent. So I'm going to pass this book along. Feel free to, the last person will have to return it to me. The next book that I wanted to share with you is actually a seminal piece. It's a book that I've had for some time. It's a book called Groundswell by Charlene Lee and Josh Bernoff. Has anyone here had an opportunity to be able to read this? If you haven't, I would say that this is a must-read for all of you, because what it does is it lays out what the components are to contend with your social graph and how to truly be able to use a strategic approach in being able to use social media for recruitment. It's not a social media for recruitment book per se, but what it does is it lays out the strategies that you need to do to build your social media community. And just to try to spread it around here a bit, if you could pass that around. The next book is Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. Has anyone here had an opportunity to be able to read this book? Tony Hsieh is the CEO of Zappos. He's actually a San Francisco Bay Area kind of guy. He is the person who believes strongly in his success is due to being able to deliver a truly exceptional customer experience. The takeaway for us in recruiting is that this should be our candidate experience. They refer to it as delivering a random act of wowness. And I would encourage you in your social media for recruiting efforts to strive to deliver a random act of wowness to those candidates that you're reaching out to. The last book, and I'll be touching upon this later, about a third of the way through the presentation, is a book by a gentleman named Eric Qualman. That's Qualman with a Q. The title of the book is called Social Nomics. And what the main takeaway behind this book and why it's important to all of you here is that social media allows us to completely change the business model of the financial constraints that are placed upon us to be able to recruit candidates today. By understanding some of the models that he talks about, you'll get a better sense of how, regardless of the size of your organization, whether it's a small organization or a medium-sized, or perhaps you're in a large organization where you're not given the budget to do what you truly need to do, Socialnomics talks about the strategies that you can deploy to beat the old business model. All of these books, by the way, are available to be shipped by UPS if you order them online. And with that being said, I'm going to turn things over to Matt Lavery, Director of Talent Acquisition for UPS.
So as I go through this today, Mike assured me that our story has merit to the people in the room. I don't know if it does. I know it worked for us. I can tell you our story. I can tell you how we got there. Whether or not it can resonate for you, I don't know. But I can tell you, I have a big brand. I didn't have a big budget to do this. In the very beginning, it was us on the side doing it together in the very beginning. And I kind of let it, maybe people above me didn't exactly know what I was doing because I really didn't report to anybody what I was doing in the very beginning. But at the same time, I'm responsible for hiring anywhere from 140 to 250,000 people in any given calendar year over the course of time. Everything from a package handler up to an IT professional or a lawyer. So as I saw our organization and the landscape changing, I knew at the time that we had to get into this game somehow, somewhere. And I'll tell you, we're going to talk about our story in a little bit. Really, one of the first things that I wanted to get in social media for, we were, prior to 2005, all of our advertising dollars were decentralized across the U.S. So each local market determined how they were going to advertise for jobs in their given area. There wasn't any kind of consolidation. And by 2005, what that meant is that on a Career Builder, a Yahoo Hot Jobs, and a Monster, we had 12, 14 different kinds of ads for similar jobs across the country. That's when I stepped in and I said, we're going to consolidate all of this into one situation. And even at that time, when I consolidated the advertising budget, only about 5% was being spent online. 95% before 2005 was still spent in print and radio and TV and flyers and mailers, all those wonderful things, advo packs, all those kind of things. But the main reason, one of the other reasons that when we started to get into social media and we became really entrenched in online media, we were really good at finding the people who are actively looking for jobs. If you go to job boards, people who are actively looking, that's what you're finding. But it depends on what study you look at. It's between 10 and 30% of the population. What about the rest of the population? How do you get a hold of those folks? And that's really where social media comes into play, that you can complete your applicant pool. You can find the passive candidates who may not be looking today until they have a reason to go look. That's really what social media, in my mind, does for UPS. It completes our applicant pool. It's not just active job seekers, it's passive job seekers. So when I consolidated the advertising budget and I started to really take the online piece on, one of the first things that we did after the first year of consolidating the budget, which took about 18 months of infighting at my company, I got called a socialist, a Democrat, and all these kind of things. So I was taking money from the people and consolidating it into my budget that I was going to be able to spend. So they made the analogy, I'm sending the money to Washington and you're going to tell me how to spend it locally. Didn't like the analogy, but I guess that's what I did. But what we did was we had to revamp our website. And one of the first things that we did is we created a library of videos, a day in the life of, so the first piece of the videos. It kind of gave everybody a video representation of what our job was like. We were one of the first companies to get all these jobs embedded on a lot of different job boards. So when people in 2007 clicked on a link, they could actually see what the job was about. And what we found was the retention rate on people going through that saw a video versus someone who just went in cold without watching a video, we're about 50% more likely for someone to schedule an application or schedule themselves for an interview, get interviewed, and get hired. So it really resonated with the folks. So we're going to show a video real quick of a new set of videos that we created last year. What we did is, UPS is a promotion from within company. You keep it going. I'll play until it starts going. So take a minute to load it. Just hit play. There we go. I'll talk about it.
Recently, Stephen sat down with Myron Gray, the president of U.S. operations for UPS. Myron also started as a part-time package handler like Stephen, and from there worked his way up the ladder at UPS. Stephen wanted to know about how Myron had achieved his success and whether or not he had any advice for a new employee like himself. This was their conversation.
How did you get to where you are now?
I think that one, finishing my education, being aware of the opportunities that were available to me, taking advantage of the mentors that I had access to. Beyond that, I've always been an outgoing person who always asked for opportunity because I was interested in advancing my career. And what I found is every single time that I asked to go up the ladder, that an opportunity was afforded to me.
What can you tell me about diversity at UPS?
The unique thing about UPS I found is UPS not only embraces diversity, but UPS supports every single individual on their quest to move up within the organization because everyone wants a winner on their team, regardless of what they look like, where they come from, or what their personal beliefs are.
What's the most compelling reason to join UPS?
The opportunities that are afforded every single employee. And UPS is a global organization that has been in business for over 100 years, and it's a growing business. So we're going to be here for a long time, and you can enjoy a great career.
What we found is that people really resonated with the video, so we kept adding to our library. Right now we have about 24 different videos. Some are day in the life of, some are like that video that talk about our culture. So when we started pushing these videos online, they became viral on their own. And what we really saw when we became engaged all over the internet, the videos had a life of their own. We incorporated the videos in everything that we were doing. So we had a full media plan. We were on many different job boards, search engine marketing, job board aggregators, YouTube, text messaging, a lot of different places. But what we found in 2009, when a lot of things happened, I didn't pay for an ad except for a professional position from January till about July. To give you an idea, it means I hired 20,000 package handlers and inside manual employees in over a 7-month period, and I didn't pay for any media during that time frame. What we found was the videos had a life of their own. We were getting hundreds and thousands of people to come to our website and stay for about 3 minutes to watch those videos before they went to apply for a job. If any of you understand jump rates on web pages, if you can keep someone's attention on one page for 3 minutes, they're engaged and they're listening to your message. So really that kind of got us thinking, because at the time in 2009 it wasn't a widely accepted fact that you could recruit and find hires through social media, especially through Facebook and Twitter. LinkedIn was for professionals you could find, but the other mediums, it was more for brand. It was more for image. It really wasn't something you wanted to go find candidates. And if we listened to the presentation yesterday a little bit, that kind of reinforced that message. I disagree with that concept. So really what we started to do in 2009, we launched the UPS Jobs Twitter page, we launched a Facebook page, we enhanced a text messaging, integrating all of it where we still did print and radio, we referenced our pages, and we tried to do a cross-media integration strategy. What we also did is we put together a 3-year plan. And when I say it was a very modest 3-year plan. When we met, Mike and I, when we talked about it, we didn't expect to get any hires the first year. That was our goal. Our goal was just to create a footprint and to start to grow. Because unlike advertising on a job board, advertising anywhere, you can't buy your audiences in social media. They have to grow. You have to earn them, if you will. And it takes time. It takes effort. It doesn't take a lot of money, but it can take some money as far as it's not completely free. The platforms may be free, but the effort and the time of the people involved isn't necessarily free. But that's an allocation of people's time in their daily jobs versus more green dollars you're spending on a job board. But as you can see, we had some fairly modest goals. But I can tell you by the end of year 2, we had already exceeded all the year 3 goals through our strategy. The couple of other things that we did in here, we kind of made some amendments or some not goals, but rules, I guess, that we wanted to live by. We wanted to grow organically, meaning we didn't want to pay people to come and join our site. So we didn't use clicks to come people to join our site or paid campaigns. We also, and this is more for being involved in a big company, when they found out that we were actually on Twitter and Facebook, we benignly followed the White House. It's not President Obama, just the White House. Our PR group quickly called us, you get to stop. You can't do that. You can't show any political affiliation. You can't follow anybody. So I'm still fighting some of those kind of rule things in our culture. So we had to do this without reciprocal following, which in social media, it's a little bit of it's not something you want to do, but it's something we had to live with at our organization. I'm still fighting on a regular basis to try to stop that, but that's where we're at. So we couldn't reciprocal follow people, and we couldn't, we didn't have any paid campaigns. These were our goals. We wanted to build, and the goals just weren't hires and applicants. We had the approach, if you build the right community, you build it the right way, those things will come. Kind of a field of dreams, if you will. So we wanted to build our communities without paid media or reciprocal following. We wanted to engage and inform employees on a deeper personal level. Getting back to the Zappos piece of that book, great customer of ours, by the way, but trying to treat everybody that comes to your page and give them attention, give them information. We put some rules in place. If someone tweets us or someone asks a question on Facebook, we have time frames on how fast we're going to get back to them in. We have people watching our page that maybe it's 5% of their day, 10% of their day, but they're engaged enough so if a question pops up, we're ready to answer. We want to engage our people on our page. When we first started doing this, now, I told you how many people you roughly hire. You can imagine how many people show interest on our page. And we can't possibly talk to every candidate. We try to, it's nearly impossible when you have several million people apply for jobs in a given year. But when people started coming to our social media properties, we kind of treated them like an A-list candidate, if you will, because they're trying to engage us. So when someone put on our page, I put an application in 10 days ago and I haven't been contacted, and then an hour after they posted that, they did get contacted by the local recruiter. Didn't matter if they got the job or not. They posted back on our page, someone contacted me. I don't believe someone's actually following. We have people actually reading this page and following up. They were excited. It wasn't a whole lot of effort to do those kind of things, but the people in the community, they saw you reading responsive, they saw you interacting, and then they were engaged with you. So, and then what we try to do is we try to measure influence, not just by applicant flow, by influence and engagement. How many of our messages were getting retweeted? Or how many other people were looking at our messages? How often were the messages that we posted being seen by how many people? We were tracking that. We wanted to track, see how our brand was being influenced across the web by the content that we put on the page. So what have we learned? It requires social media. If you're going to recruit through social media, it requires time, technology, resources, planning, and measurement. I haven't mentioned a lot of money yet, because I'll talk to you about what we spent just in green dollars, not people's time, in the next couple of slides. Not a whole lot. But I would also include patience. Because I think if you don't set your goals up in the front and you're expecting a lot of hires when you first get on Twitter and you first start posting your Facebook wall and your audience hasn't developed yet, you're going to get discouraged and you're going to give up. You have to have patience and you have to have a goal, not just a year goal, but I would put a multi-year goal. Because it's going to take you time to build your community to get there. So, yes, the other piece, it's not a sprint in social media. It's a marathon. It's a long-term commitment. And you can't just become engaged and want to run for a half an hour. You have to have people monitoring your channels, monitoring your pages on a daily basis, around the clock if possible. What we did is we have people working for me on the East Coast and West Coast. So I have people from roughly 7 a.m. Eastern, that's when they normally came into work, the people on the West Coast, local time 6 o'clock, which is 9 o'clock on the East Coast. So we have a lot of coverage going across the country on our pages. Now, if someone posts at 2 in the morning, I have responded. They've woken up and I've looked and I've responded, but but more times I sleep through it in all honesty. But they'll get a response the next morning. And we kind of put that in our rules of our social media, how we respond to folks. Within an hour during normal business times, outside of normal business times, first thing in the morning. So there's some rules in place. So if you violate your own rules, you're violating your page. That's your brand, that's your equity. And so you have to put it in that context that you need to be responsive to the people in your community. And they'll appreciate you for it if you can do it the right way. So as we're talking about this, and this got brought up a little bit yesterday, social media it's a piece. It's a piece of your plan right now. It shouldn't be your whole plan. I don't see how it can be. I think it can be a large piece, and it's a growing piece. One of the other reasons I got involved in social media, when we first took over the advertising budget and we started buying some big ad buys of some of the big job boards, by the third year of doing it with them, they were having to throw more and more product at me to get to the same number of hires as they did the year before. And I started asking these questions. Well, they tell me this package is worth double what I'm paying for it or triple what I'm paying for it. And I kept asking, well, why do you have to give me more product to give me the same number of hires? Well, you're saturated in our market, or they gave me some other situations. In reality, what we found was people were looking for jobs differently. People were going to search engines and looking for jobs. So when you're talking about how they were doing that. And the other aspect that we started to get involved in social media, we thought that was the one area 3 years ago that we weren't involved in that candidates are going to. Especially when you talk about over 100 million people on LinkedIn. Over, what is it, 800 million on Facebook now? And it's, what, 6 out of 10 people, they say, in the US have a Facebook page? So if you're not involved in those arenas where people are, especially when you're trying to find talent like I am on the young side of the scale, people between 18 and 25 primarily, you're going to get behind. You're going to get left behind. So it's part of our overall strategy. It's not our only strategy, but it's part of our overall strategy. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike now, and then we'll go back and forth a little bit.
How's that? I think that works. Matt and I had the privilege of being able to present at Facebook a couple of months ago, and we had the person who heads up recruiting for JCPenney told us that by the 9th slide, the human brain shuts down. So that's why Matt, being as intelligent and as strategic as he is, said, Mike, why don't you take over on the 9th slide? So what I thought I would do is try to re-engage you at this point. And I have another question for you. How many of you like watching movies with Brad Pitt? In the room. And guys, you don't have to, he's a guy's guy as well as a ladies' guy, you know. How many of you have seen the movie Moneyball? Moneyball, for those of you who haven't seen it, is a movie whose setting is actually just across the bay here in Oakland. And it's about the manager, Billy Beane, who has a Major League Baseball team, the Oakland Athletics, who has to compete, even though he has a really, really small budget, he's got to compete against the New York Yankees, who have a budget almost 10 times what he has, or the Red Sox, who have a budget that's almost 8 times what he has. And yet he is tasked with trying to compete for that same talent and try to deliver those same results as those people who have budgets that are 8 to 10 times more than what he is. The title of the movie is called Moneyball. And what I'd like to put to all of you as we go through these numbers and as we explore the ability to use social media to recruit, think about the notion of using Moneyball, the theory of Moneyball, as a way to be able to leverage the ability to be able to get the talent that you need without having to spend using the old traditional business model of recruiting. And so that's what we attempted to do in this process. And by the way, Matt, UPS loves to track. They love to track packages not just from the beginning point and the end point, but every step in between. And because I had a wonderful partner like UPS who loved to track each of those touch points with the customers during the shipping process as it goes from distribution point to distribution point, we put in place a process to be able to track candidates at every touch point along the recruitment funnel. And so we applied a very similar strategy to the way that UPS tracks packages to the way that we tracked candidates through not just social media but also online and traditional media too. So what do we track with social media? Well, we talk about influence, and then we talk about bridging the harder metrics of things such as cost per application and cost per hire. Well, you can pay for certain things, and during the first couple years, actually, We didn't pay for anything to drive community building for UPS on Twitter or Facebook. But you can do it. And maybe there's a valid business reason for, for employers to do that. But for UPS, we had to prove proof of concept that you could use social media to help to recruit people. So before we were going to invest big money, we had to show that it held promise. There are properties. You don't have to have a Facebook page to advertise on Facebook, and you don't have to have a Twitter page to advertise on Twitter. But it sure is nice to have a presence there. And so UPS does have a Twitter page, and also we're talking primarily about Facebook and Twitter in this presentation, but we also have a LinkedIn company page, which we'll show you as well. And then we talk about earned. And this is what Matt was talking about. That experience of someone who before, if they applied for a job and their application went into that ATS black hole where nobody ever got back to them, but with the promise of social media and delivering that random act of wowness, we could respond back to them, and then they in turn speak back to the rest of the community that someone from UPS cares. I'm not just a number to them, and they responded and treated me with dignity. Coming not from UPS, but coming from that person resonates. It's a powerful influence upon building community. And we follow all of these things, and we track all of them, and I'm going to show you how we track the paid piece, the owned piece, and the earned piece. There are a lot of different ways that you can track. The slide itself is kind of hard to see, but we track all of these things very, very closely. And we track them to make sure that we can tell things such as sentiment, we can tell how people are responding. It also gives us guidance as far as which elements are working well and which ones aren't, so that we can continually, we use the term optimize. Within UPS, they use the term constructive dissatisfaction. It's a way for the ability for the platform to grow and improve over time. And this monitoring aspect is crucial to the ability to be able to enhance that. So, here's the tail of the tape. We presented this at Microsoft at ERE's a social recruiting summit, and the numbers aren't overwhelming, but bear in mind, 2.5 years ago, the jury was really out as to whether or not you could drive any applicant flow using Twitter or Facebook. The common sentiment was that, well, Facebook and Twitter are a place where people go to interact with their friends, and they don't want to be bothered hearing about employment. Well, we tracked. And this wasn't tracking through candidate self-selection or with recruiters using pull-down. We tracked completely objectively with source tags attached to URLs, so that all of it was done behind the scenes without any recruiter bias or without any candidate self-selection. And so here's what we ended up with. There was a $7,500 investment that was put towards essentially outsourcing it all. It was primarily Matt and me who ran the campaign in year one as a test to see if it worked. And our goal of 1,000 followers on Twitter, we set a goal of 250 tweets, 200 leads, 100 created apps, 50 lists, 25 completed applications, and 10 hires.
And the only reason we put hires on there, some people in my organization found out we were doing it. I had to give a presentation and I couldn't go in there with 0. Our standpoint when we first started was 0, but when I presented it to our leadership later on what we were doing, that wouldn't have flown if I told them, well, the goal was 0 hires in year 1. So you had to put a number behind.
Now, for your company, it may be different, but you'll need to bear in mind what are the resources that you're going to need to be able to deploy a program over a 1-year period of time. And you should try to back in the amount of man hours that are going to be required, what kind of creative development, if there's going to be creative development. And you should set goals, perhaps the types of people that you're recruiting, such as God bless you, the person from Tennessee who already hired 100 people. I think sooner or later is it Nashville? Yeah. Sooner or later the well for trained engineers that you're going after is going to get dry, but I mean, God bless you for keeping them coming. There may be a greater premium associated with sourcing those types of candidates than there might have been for some of the ones that we're doing for UPS. So you would adjust what you're looking for to build a community. Maybe you wouldn't need 1,000 followers. Maybe for that select group, a smaller but well-engaged audience would be enough. But the point is, you should set goals. And you should try to put a dollar amount on what the manpower is going to be required. And then benchmark your success. By the end of 2009, we launched in April of 2009. By the end of 2009, UPS Jobs had 1,300 followers without the benefit of us auto-following. We didn't know if folks would be really put out that we didn't follow them back. But that didn't turn out to be the case. The people who followed UPS Jobs followed because they wanted to, not because they were going to get the benefit of UPS following them back. So once we go through this process, all that we needed to do was then develop metrics based upon the investment against the goal. Well, then we had a unit cost of what the followers would be. So it was a $7.50 unit cost that we had put against a follower in the early stages of this. And we could start to look at the return on investment through the lens of followership, amount of tweets, leads, created applications, completed applications, hires, and Twitter lists. It allowed us to be able to see whether or not it was worth doing. And to be able to, if it was worth doing, make the business case to see how much further can it scale up. For Facebook, we had a similar investment, $7,500. We set similar goals. We didn't really know at this point what the differentiation would be in terms of candidate experience going on Facebook versus Twitter. As Matt said, and I'd be kidding you if I said otherwise, we didn't even know what we didn't know. But we were going to try to test it in a controlled environment by measuring all of these metrics as best we could and by monitoring, as I showed you that monitoring dashboard, to be able to learn as we move forward and do what we could to be able to increase the goals that, overreach the goals that we had set for us. So it turned out that we had the Facebook page launched in October of 2009, almost about 5 months later. And by the end of 2009, it had almost 1,900 followers. Yes?
Was your $7,500 investment in TMP?
Yeah. Basically, we put together all of the costs that were associated with the man hours that were associated with it. There was a little bit of creative development that was associated with it too for branding, but it was fairly modest, as you can imagine. So, as you can see, what we ended up finding was that the Facebook community was growing at a more rapid pace than the Twitter community was. But bear in mind, we weren't doing the auto-following. It's not to say that you shouldn't be in Twitter, but that the experience was different, and we needed to make sure that we responded in a different way to candidates on Facebook than we do in Twitter to make sure that we're communicating with them in the way that they want us to communicate. One of the nice things was, we got 12 hires from Facebook in year one, really within about 4 months. Facebook no longer has this, but at the time they had post-quality scores and they had post-quality ratings. And to have a 31 was incredibly high at the time. They've now moved over to a different format. But allowed us the ability to be able to tie in those softer metrics of influence, which kind of go down to about this point, and then try to tie in. We also had an opportunity for them to go to a landing page where they could submit their contact information if they weren't ready to apply for a job right now, but wanted us to reach out to them on a regular basis once openings were available to them. And as we got into these harder metrics, we bridged those. So we truly did work hard to bridge the soft metrics of influence to the hard metrics of cost per hire and all of those candidate touch points in between, much like a package shipped by UPS goes from that you ship from your home that would then go to the loved one that you're shipping across the country and noticing at every point in between. So we knew it worked. And so we wanted to take it to the next level. And so we then made sure to do linking to the Facebook and Twitter pages from the UPS Jobs website. UPS is a large organization. If we couldn't have shown the results, I don't know if we would have been able to get UPS to sign off on being able to have us link back to those social media properties. But it was terrific that we were able to do it. We connected with all of our job board postings. We launched a mobile-friendly site, upsjobs.mobi, in August of 2010, and integrated with that. When we say cross-media integration, what we mean is that social media is non-linear. We talk about a hiring funnel and making it seem like it's a very linear process. But the reality is the candidates are bouncing all over the place. So here's an example of the Facebook page. 13,648 fans from at the end of December from 1,800 the year before. This is an example of Facebook Insight Analytics. It's free. Anybody can access it. Just as Craig had talked about, we wanted to use free or low-cost tools to be able to assist us with our social media management. It allows you the opportunity to be able to see the demographic, gender break, what the age break is, where they're located. UPS Jobs Twitter page went through a similar growth. Here's an example of cross-media integration when we had to do print ads. And so here's the tail of the tape when we talk about at the end of 2010, after a very, as year one was a bit of a start, but by the end of year two, through our social media and mobile integration, we were able to attribute 955 minimum hires. We could never say that we were able to attribute all of the activity that came through, but we knew from the process that we put in place that we had at least 955 minimum candidates that we could attribute directly as a result of mobile or social, or frankly, it was really a combination of the two.
Some of the tracking gets a little hanky when we have people going from Facebook to the mobile device